I am the American dream. I'm Mary Kay Ash, founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, and I'm delighted to be here today at your 36th annual Popcorn Forum at North Idaho College. Oh, I must tell you that Coeur d'Alene, Idaho has to be God's country. In this audience, I have to say, I think I have some of my daughters here. Where are you? Welcome. It's so nice to meet you. And right in front of me, I have one of my senior sales directors, Katie Mans. Katie, would you stand, please? Katie has been invaluable to me here. Thank you. And Tony Stewart, where are you? Tony, I know that you're not from Texas, but you're still a Southern gentleman, and I thank you for that. In 1963, I took $5,000 and invested in my company. I now have a corporation in Dallas, Texas, where we employ almost 4,000 people. And this corporation, this company, has often been voted as one of the best companies in the United States for people to work. We've developed more than 200 original products. We sell our products now in 30 countries throughout the world. Besides the United States, we're now in places like Mexico, the former Soviet Union, Africa, and even now in the Middle East. This has opened unlimited opportunities to women, and we're so proud of that. I've written 4 books. They all made it to the bestseller list. And my business principles, I call them the Mary Kay Way, are taught in MBA programs across this nation in some of the finest graduate schools. We have a foundation, and our foundation provides funding for many different causes, but 2 principally that are closest to my heart, and that's for the cure for cancer and the end to domestic violence. And we've given tens of millions of dollars to such causes, and we're very proud of that. I understand that I now have, or we have, over 1 million independent sales consultants around the world. And our company has produced more women millionaires than any other company in the history of the world. In 1963, I started my business with $5,000, and now I understand Mary Kay is worth almost $3 billion. And you thought I just sold lipstick. Now, how many of you today would like to have a little bit more of the American dream? Let me see your hand. How many of you would like a little bit of motherly advice on how you can get that dream? Let me see your hand. You know, I contend that you have to become a possibility thinker. You need that you can do it attitude. So I'm going to cover a few things today with you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, and that's what I call the rags. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my failures. But I fell forward to success, and that's where the riches came. And then I hope to inspire you today to discover the greatness that each and every one of you has inside of you, because you can do it. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life. I was born in, well, I'm not going to tell you what year I was born in. I believe a woman that would tell her age would tell anything. So let's just say I'm 30 through, and it often just makes me a little bit upset when people come up to me and they say, Mary Kay, let me guess your age. And oftentimes they guess I'm much older than I actually am. Once a lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, Mary Kay, I just love you." She was trying to butter me up. She said, "Let me guess your age." And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, "Yes, dear, I'll let you guess my age if you don't mind if I guess your weight first." Well, I was born in Hot Wells, Texas, but when I was very young, our family had to move to Houston. You see, my father came down with tuberculosis, and he became a complete invalid, and he was relegated to a wheelchair. My mother had been trained as a nurse, but in those days a nurse was treated no better and got no more money than like a house servant. So she took the best job that she could because she became the sole support for our family. She took on became a manager of a small diner. I never knew a woman who worked so hard in her life. She would get up early in the morning before I even got up, before I went to school, got on a bus and went to the diner, and she worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. That made my life fairly unchildlike because I became the sole provider for my father when she was gone from the time I was 6 years old. Now, that's not a typical child life, but I just accepted it. I found that that gave me a lot of independence and a lot of confidence. Can you imagine some of the meals that I provided for my daddy? One day he said to me, he said, "Mary Kay, I would like some potato soup." And I said, "Potato soup?" I was about 8 years old. I didn't know what to do. So I called my mother. Now, my mother may have been gone, but she was always right there by the telephone for me. I still remember the phone number, Rosemont 7779. And when I called her, she was always there. "Mary Kay, what can I do?" She told me how to make potato soup. And anytime I had a problem, she would say, "Mary Kay, you can do it. You can do it." She was the original possibility thinker. I am so glad that I had a mother like that. Somehow, she made me have a competitive spirit, too. And so, I joined the Girl Scouts. We had to sell cookies. Guess who sold the most cookies? I entered a typing contest. We were very poor. I had no typewriter at home to practice on. So I don't know how my mother did it. Remember, she was the original possibility thinker. She scrimped and saved, and one morning I woke up, and there on the kitchen table was a little old Royal portable typewriter, a used one. I was able to practice, and guess who won that typing contest? I became a debater. I love to speak in public. I think God has brought me to this place. Being able to speak in public. Well, in school, I went to the state championships in Texas, no less, and I was second place in all the state, and that was a very proud moment in my life. In my house, good grades were not enough. I had to get straight A's. In fact, I was such a good student, I'm so humble as to say, that not only did I get straight A's, but I finished high school in just 3 years, and I longed to go to college like those of you here in this room. But in those days, there were no Pell Grants, there were no college loans like you have today, and very few scholarships, I must say, for young ladies. I wanted to be a doctor, but that was not what my life had in store for me. And so I did what a lot of young Texas girls did. At the age of 17, I got married. I married Ben Rogers. Now, granted, during the day he was just a filling station attendant, but at night he had a part-time job as a disc jockey, and he had a musical group called the Hawaiian Strummers. So for my 17-year-old eyes, I thought he must be very much like Elvis Presley. We had 3 children, my 2 sons, Ben and Richard, and my lovely little daughter, Mary Lynn. But things turned. World War II came along, and my husband Ben was called up to fight for our country, and he was gone for 3 full years. That left me with my 3 children to be the total emotional support for my family, of course, but also it's very difficult to get along on a GI salary, having 3 children and my mouth to feed, and so I decided it was time for me to go out and see if I could earn a little bit of money for my family. I sold books door to door, bringing a little bit of income, and I found I had some success at that. Well, after my husband came back from the war, he was a changed man. He told me he didn't want to be married anymore. In fact, there was even another woman. He wanted a divorce. I was devastated. And so now I was not only the total emotional support for my children, but I also had to take on the financial support. And so I decided that I had a wonderful mother, but I didn't want to have a life as I lived where my mother was never home. So I looked up into selling. I went to Stanley Home Products. They were the originators of the in-home parties for sales. And they sold such glamorous things as furniture polish, toothbrushes, laundry detergent. And I thought, well, this way I could be home with my children, and unfortunately, I was not a success. But I decided I would do something about it. So I took my 3 children, and I took them to my mother's house. I borrowed $12, and I used that $12 to get on a train to go from Houston to Dallas to the National Convention for Stanley Home Products. I felt I should go there because maybe I would learn something to become the kind of salesperson I wanted to become. Everybody cautioned me. They said, Mary Kay, conventions like that are for wicked men doing wicked things. I just wanted to learn something. So I packed my bags. I only owned 1 dress. That's how poor we were. When I say I packed my bags, I didn't even have a suitcase. I just had my Stanley Home Products bag. And to save money on food, I packed myself a pound of cheese and a box of crackers, and that's what I would eat for the next 3 days. And I'm telling you, those 3 days were 3 of the most important days of my life. I was in one session where awards were being given out for the best salespeople. It was an auditorium, something like this. And all the best salespeople were right up here on the stage, and then the next best salespeople were sitting right down here, like where Katie Mann's is sitting. And the worst salespeople for Stanley Home Products were way up there, just like you up there. They sat us according to our sales, and that's where I was. And that's where I deserved to be. I was the worst. But then I watched them crown the Queen of Sales, and that was a turning point in my life. There she was. She was everything I wasn't. She was tall and brunette, and she was a good salesperson. Everybody was cheering and standing and clapping, and they gave her this beautiful bouquet of flowers. And then, to top everything off, they brought her this magnificent alligator purse. I had never seen anything like that in my life, and I knew I could never afford such a thing. And something got me. And I decided that right there and then, next year, I was going to be the Queen of Sales. If you saw me sitting up there, you would never think so. Well, I hatched a plan. I decided that if you want to achieve something, you hitch your wagon to a star. If you want to be thin, you follow a thin person. If you want to be a good singer, you follow a good singer. If you want to be good in sales, you follow a good salesperson. Hitch your wagon to a star. So I went to that Queen of Sales, and I begged her, and I begged her, and I said, please, will you please put on a sales presentation for me so I can learn from you? And she did. My next step in my plan is you've got to work the plan. In other words, get on that railroad and ride the rails. I took 19 pages of notes, during her presentation. And I was convinced if these were the things that made her a success, those are the things that were going to make me a success. And finally, having all these dreams is not enough. You've got to tell somebody. I don't know what got into me those 3 days, but I needed to tell somebody that I was going to be the queen of sales next year. And you know what I did? I went right to the president of Stanley Home Products himself. I said, you don't know me, but I'm Mary Kay, and next year I'm going to be your queen of sales. Now, if you can imagine, he didn't know me. He could have dismissed me, made fun of me, said, yeah, sure, and walk away. But you know what he did? He took my hands, and he looked me right in the eye, and he said, you know, Mary Kay, I think you can do it. Those 3 words literally changed my life. It was like my mother talking to me on the phone. Mary Kay, you can do it. So when I went back to my home after those 3 days, I put my plan into action, and the next year, I became the queen of sales. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. Everything was perfect except, remember that alligator bag? I was so looking forward to that. You know what I got? A flounder light. Now, you don't know what a flounder light is. I don't either, a flounder light. I understand it's a light that you use when you go fly fishing. Well, I determined right there and then, if ever I was in charge of awards for people who deserved awards, they would be something that the person really wants, like an alligator bag. Or like my independent sales ladies, sales consultants, diamond rings. Or how about a nice pink Cadillac in your driveway? That's kind of my rag story, but now I'm going to get into the riches. But you know, I only got into the riches when I had my failures. You've got to fall forward to success. It's okay to fail. You got to pick yourself up and learn from those failures. And I have more scabs on my knees than anybody else here, and I've learned from my failures. I was with Stanley Home Products for more than 10 years, and I hoped to move up in the corporate world. But every time a door opened, it seemed back in the 1950s, every time a door opened, a man walked through. So I picked myself up, and I switched to a company called World Gifts. I was an immediate success. They sold decorations for the homes. I opened up 42 states to their product line. I became the national sales director for the company. I trained salespeople, and then I trained trainers. And finally, I became so busy that my employer called me and he said, Mary Kay, I want you to train somebody as your assistant. You have so many people to work with. So for a full year, I took a young man under my wing, and I told him and I taught him how to become a sales director and to train trainers. And when the year was over, I was called into my employer's office, and I was going to ask him for a raise that I so richly deserved. Imagine my surprise when I didn't get that raise. And in fact, when I pleaded my case, my boss said, I'm sorry, Mary Kay, but you will no longer be the national sales director. The young man that you trained will now be your boss at double your salary. And I protested. I said, well, if I could teach a man to do my job, why couldn't I be his supervisor? And he said to me, these are his words, Mary Kay, you're thinking like a woman again. Men require higher salaries because they have families to support. Now, this is coming from a man that I had worked with for over 10 years and had known that I was the sole support for my 3 children. And he went on, Mary Kay, you know, you in that position It just wouldn't do. What he meant was, you are in the wrong body, honey. And so I resigned. I quit. I went home and I cried and I cried and I cried. And you know what else? I waited all night by the telephone and all day by the telephone, hoping that he would call me and ask me back to work. How pathetic is that? He never called. I was devastated, and so I retired. I hated retirement. I have to tell you, I read the newspaper, maybe you do too, and I see obituary and it said, so-and-so died, so-and-so retired last year and died today. So-and-so retired last year and died today. You know, I was living right across the street from a mortuary at that time. I was just about ready to call them and say, come and pick me up. I was bored, and so I decided I would direct my anger, and I would write a book. I would show what companies do properly and what companies don't do well, and then I would try to fix everything. And I had all these yellow legal pads out, and I was writing like crazy, and I thought I had some wonderful ideas. And when I finished writing, before I even finished that book, I never did finish that book, but you know what? I decided, if I'm so smart, why don't I just start a company myself? Took me a year to plan. I had my principles of work called the Mary Kay Way, and I decided that I would open up my company. And you know what my mission statement is to this day? To give women an opportunity to succeed. It may sound corny to you, but I truly believe that God led me to that place. I had $5,000, just about my life savings, and I was ready to launch my business. Now, I had been single for over 20 years, and I recently remarried. In fact, I was a newlywed. I had been married for 4 weeks. Now, in our new company, my husband was going to take care of the business angle. I know nothing about business. I don't even write checks. Tell me to sign it, I'll sign it. And I was going to take care of the marketing and the sales. Well, we were sitting at the breakfast table one morning, and our company was going to open exactly in 4 weeks from that day. And my new husband of only 4 weeks died of a massive heart attack right there at the kitchen table. Oh, another setback. How could I continue? I remember going to the funeral, and there I was with my children, now young adults with their own families. I was already a grandmother at this time. I was past my prime. I was in grief, and I was surrounded by my children asking, what should I do? And it was just like my mother. You can do it, Mary Kay. That's what my children told me. Mother, if anybody can do this, you can do it. And how wonderful to be surrounded by people who believe in you, who tell you you can do it. I had paid many people in my business to do things for me, and they were not encouraging. In fact, you know that my accountant told me that I would never make a penny in my business because I was trying to give too much money to my salespeople. My own lawyer took the time and he wrote some letters to Washington, D.C. and came back with a printout. And on that printout, it listed all the cosmetic companies that had been founded last year, and all the ones that had gone under had become bankrupt within 2 weeks. That's very encouraging. So I just decided, with my children's help, against all odds, we were going to prove them wrong. And so I went forward and I had my first cosmetic party, and guess what? I sold $1.50's worth of products. But we worked our plan, and within a few months, we had sold over $100,000 worth of cosmetics, and we knew that we had a hit. This may also sound a little corny to some people these days, but it is my belief that in this great country, there is no limit to what an individual can accomplish if they work hard. So finally, I'm going to give you a little maternal advice about how you can have part of the American dream. First of all, you have to become a possibility thinker. You have to have that you can do it attitude. And this you can do it attitude will work in your business. It will work for you here at North Idaho College. And I'm telling you, it can also work for you in your personal lives. And these are principles. Principles don't change. My first principle is the golden rule. Solid biblical principle. Do unto others as you would wish others to do unto you. Doesn't that make sense? I can tell you that in Mary Kay, we have never made a decision that would be unfair to somebody. I like to think each and every one of the people I meet, like the ones of you in the audience, that you're wearing a sign. That right on that sign it says, treat me like I'm somebody important. Make me feel like I'm important. That one thing will change your life. Treat people that way. Another one of my principles that works in your personal life, in business, or here at North Idaho College is God first, family second, career third. I bet I am the only CEO of a major company that tells their people that you put your job third. You need to set priorities. And it works every time. You know, men, I have a little information for you. Don't be intimidated by a successful woman. That is, if she's in business or if she's in school. I find that when a woman has some interest outside of the home, she becomes more knowledgeable. She's more interesting. She makes a better wife. She makes a better mother. But she's got to put God first, family second, career third. And so men, you help the women in your life. Get behind her. You know, we hear stories all the time in Mary Kay where women are trying to start their businesses and they have a little hard time nudging their husband to come along. I have a wonderful story to share with you. I once met a firefighter that came up to me in one of our seminars. He was a hard-working man, and he had a lovely wife who was trying to start her Mary Kay business and 3 beautiful daughters. Well, he worked his firefighting job, which he just loved. But in order to keep food on the table and to have a nice standard of living for his family, he worked all his days off. He worked as a carpenter. So he worked 7 days a week. He was hardly home. And he knew that he was missing out on that family life that he so valued. Well, at first, he wasn't sure about his wife starting her Mary Kay company. But he changed, he went over, he started supporting her, and she began to earn more money, and she was very successful and very happy. And you know what happened? She made so much money after quite a short time that he was able to stay as a firefighter, but he was able to quit his second job. And it allowed him to stay home on his days off and help raise his 3 beautiful daughters. I'm telling you, that is a precious thing for any family, particularly for you fathers in the audience. You know, men, if your women are successful, it gives you more freedom. Maybe you can take that vacation you've always wanted. Maybe you can have a new truck. Maybe you can have a better home, better school district, more time with your family like that fireman. And maybe you're in a job that you don't like and you can't get out of it because you're working all the time. Maybe with your wife's help, you can go back to school and have a career that you really love. Or maybe one day you'll come home from work and in the driveway you'll see a pink Cadillac. You know, women, you have to have the support of your family and your husband. A woman with the support of her husband is a woman and a half. And a woman without the support of her husband is half a woman. And you need balance. God first, family second, career third. I've heard some people say you can have it all. Oh, you can have it all, but you have to give something up. But you need balance. You know, a woman has other needs in her life beside balance. You know, I have heard that from birth to 14, a woman needs good parents and good health. I've also heard then, from the ages of 14 to 40, a woman needs good looks. From the ages of 40 to 60, well, she needs a good personality. And from the age of 60 on, she needs cash. Lots and lots of cash. You know, women, you are in a man's world, but you can succeed. I just think that women lack confidence. So many times a woman comes to my company inhibited because she has a bad self-image and no belief in herself. And if you ask me, the common denominator for women not achieving what they need to achieve is they just lack confidence. They lack confidence in their own abilities. You know, men, at least, have enough sense to bluff their way through it. And now I have some advice mostly for you women out there. Use your femininity. I used to be criticized. I was told, Mary Kay, you're thinking like a woman again. I say, good. You know, God created the world. And when he was done, he looked at the world and he said, this is good. And then he created man. And he said, well, this is good. But then God said, I can do better. And he created a woman. You know, your femininity is a gift from God. So in business, be a woman. In business, you need your femininity. You need your intuition. Oh, you need product knowledge. You need market knowledge. You need some stubbornness. You need some guts. You need lipstick. You know, there's no reason for a successful woman to act like a man. And nothing distresses me more than to see a woman trying to act like a man in business, cigarette hanging from her mouth, cursing. I want ladies to dress in a feminine way, not sexy. We don't approve of pants on the job in our company. One time a lady came and she was applying for a job in my company, and as I was sitting across from her, I was looking at how she fit into the pants. And I thought to myself, oh my dear, your end does not justify the jeans. Oh, it's a challenge to look your best. I know, don't I know? Every night I go to bed, I try to look like Elizabeth Taylor, and I wake up in the morning and I look just like Charles de Gaulle. And a lot of you think, you know, there's not enough time in the day to look nice and to do all the things you need to do. Well, I have an idea. I started the 5 o'clock club. If you get up at 5 o'clock every morning, you now have a 9-day work week. And when I get up at 5 in the morning, I'm able to do things that maybe later on the day I would take away from my family or time with my husband. It gives me time to think and to, well, make myself look nice. It gives me a chance to make my husband a nice breakfast. I think he deserves that. In Mary Kay, we believe that there are no ugly women, just lazy women. Well, I am just about out of time, and you have been a wonderful audience. I've told you a little bit about my rags to riches story, my life, and how I fell forward to success. And I've also given you a little advice for your life. I want to urge you all to become possibility thinkers. For each and every one of you out here, I know that you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I would like to end with a little gift for you. It's a poem that I found years ago. I don't even know who the author is. I often end my seminars and my speeches with this poem. It's called On Silver Wings. I have a premonition that soars on silver wings. It is a dream of your accomplishment of many wondrous things. I do not know beneath which sky or where you'll challenge fate. I only know it will be high. I only know it will be great. God bless you all, and thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
May I say that Miss Mary Kay Ash, you were absolutely extraordinary. Let's thank her again. In a moment, she'll be answering questions from you. I just want to remind you before we do so that we have a long day and a wonderful day. At 1 o'clock at the Student Union, there'll be a panel of famous people, and again tonight at 7 p.m. With that, Mary Kay will take questions, and I'll bring the mic to you so we can record it on television. Who has the first question? Don't be shy.
Come on,
here
you
we
can
go. Right
do,
here we
you
are.
Can do it.
Right
you can
here.
Ask me a question.
Mary Kay, I admire that many of your sales reps have become millionaires, but there's been some recent reports in the paper that your company actually exploits women, that you take women and you give them the possibility that they're going to be, make a lot of money, but actually they take out, say, equity loans on their home, and many of them go bankrupt. And actually they are given this dream, and actually many of them do not succeed. So what is your success rate? Do you know how many people do succeed and how many do fail?
Well, anybody who truly wants to succeed can. We have the plan, but you got to work the plan. You don't work the plan, it's not going to work for you. And I think that might be highly exaggerated. Most of our women, it is true, probably average about $10,000 a year. But that is perhaps for about 6 hours a week of work. But those ladies, like our ladies up here in the front, with that go-give and go-to-it attitude, they're making a lot more than that. So you got to work the plan. It's like anything else. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Thank you for the question.
It's a really tough one, wasn't it? Okay. Who's next? Who else wants to ask a question? A very reserved audience, Mary
They're
Kay.
very reserved.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have any more questions, what I need to do at this time, Tony, if it's okay?
Yes, please.
This is where I am no longer Mary Kay. I tried to do something with my hair before, but this is called part of the Chautauqua experience. We are scholars of a character for however long it takes. Mine has been a journey of about a year. And then we perform as the character where we make up our own script after reading all kinds of sources and perform as the character and then answer questions in character. And you guys were kind of shy. But you might want to ask me some questions about my journey, perhaps. I'm a communication instructor here at North Idaho College. And if you have any questions about what I learned about my character this year or any of the journey that I had, I'll be happy to answer those questions. Are you going to be shy again? Yes.
We'll use the mic.
Hi, Mona.
Hello.
What prompted you to choose Mary Kay? I'm just curious.
Well, I don't know. I've been intrigued with this woman for a while. You see this Texas big hair lady every now and then. And I really didn't know anything about her. I thought it would be something different for the Popcorn Forum. She's not your typical political type of person, and you wouldn't categorize her as somebody who is a social reformer or something like that. But she's certainly an interesting person. She has been voted like Business Person of the Year. She received the Horatio Alger Award. I mean, very significant. And she also thinks that she was probably the original feminist in the United States, but not feminism to take away from how a woman might be, but to expand on a woman, what a woman can be. And so that intrigued me.
Other questions? Right here.
With all the money that she made after her death, where did that go? Did she contribute to society?
Well, she has a foundation that is has given tens of millions of dollars away. And I forgot to say this, but there's a printout of like 4 pages of little bitty type. I was going to say that. Little bitty type of all the awards that her foundation has recognition for what they have done. She also has a family, and hers is a private company, and so they had the right to do anything they want with the business, and so I'm sure that her heirs are well taken care of.
Mona, you could be very much help too, and then I'll get Marshall's question. There may be some people in the audience that want to do this in the future. And for you who don't know, not only is Mona just an extraordinary human being, they just don't get any better at this than her. And but Mona has the ability to transfer from a character like Mother Teresa, who was most humble in life and almost lived in poverty as the people she was helping, and then you did Margaret Sanger and on this. Do 2 things if you would. One is, how can you transition from people that are so different? And secondly, tell the audience, what are some of the do's and don'ts when you become a Chautauqua performer?
Well, it's not too difficult to transition because you live with, I've lived with Mary Kay now for about a year, and I've really come to like her a lot. She is a really fine woman. And this is kind of interesting. When I was studying Mother Teresa, I lived with Mother Teresa for a year, and another fine woman. And I was very surprised. I was thinking that there must be a few more scandals or something like that in Mary Kay. And I really found nobody saying anything bad about her as a person. Isn't that amazing? Whereas Mother Teresa, there were actually websites that were dedicated to the truth about Mother Teresa. A whole book written about Mother Teresa by a very famous journalist who claimed that she was a fraud. I mean, things like that. And I don't know, maybe Mary Kay had a better publicist, but nothing really bad about her. There may be some criticism about the company possibly, but she herself seemed like the real deal. I mean, she was the woman walking around making cookies, staying up all night signing letters, 2,000 at a time, to make sure it was her own signature. Now, at one time I was performing as Margaret Sanger, who was the mother of birth control, and that was a wild and crazy lady. And then I was performing as Mother Teresa. And the week I was performing as Mother Teresa, somebody called and asked that I would perform as Margaret Sanger. I couldn't do that. You know, so you kind of live with the person for a year. I'm not that, my husband's here, I think, someplace. I'm not that schizoid, am I? Okay. And your other question, tell me, was?
Tell them what you should do if you're going to really be this effective. And you know, we've had a lot of workshops and training that you've done, and Clay Jenkins and others. Give them some advice and encourage them if they would like to do something like this.
If any of you are interested in history, this is a phenomenal experience to go through. You live with a character for virtually as long as you wish. Mine's been about a year. You live with that person, and you're constantly reading about the person and finding out more about the person and trying to see videotapes and all this kind of thing. The first piece of, and the most important piece of advice that I have to give you is really like the person that you are performing as. You may find that they're flawed, and maybe not like them, but respect them and be intrigued by them. I did not like Margaret Sanger, but boy was I intrigued with her. And boy, I knew how she changed the course of history. So I could live with her, okay? So you've got to have that going for you. And also, Tony is very good about selecting people. If you ever want to try this experience, he'll find somebody good for you.
Marshall has a question.
Marshall, by the way, he's a real possibility thinker. He's a realtor here in Coeur d'Alene, and he actually provided me with an audio tape of Mary Kay Ash in a speech that she'd given at the Crystal Cathedral years ago.
Before the Crystal Cathedral was even there.
It was a very nice thing to listen to.
It was 1977 that I met her, and this was Mary Kay Ash. I'm telling you right now, she was Mary Kay Ash. Your question?
You are such a gentleman. Thank you.
No, that's not.
Thank
You were. Your statement about the people losing money, I also do sales training, and I've been in the sales business for a long time. I was a failure when I started. We all are failures when we start in sales. But you know something? Anybody can be successful in sales if they really put their all into it. And just like anything else, I teach realtors all the time, new realtors coming into the business, and almost all of them are going to fail. They're not going to be in the business 3 or 4 years from now. That's just the way the business is. But any one of them can be successful that's in that group. And you never know who's going to be it, because you can see what's on the outside, but you can't see what's on the inside. And that's one of the things that Mary Kay did. Thank you.
Any other questions? Over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tony, I have one, and I have my own mic back here.
You go ahead, and then
Okay.
this is our great
It's
production
God
staff
speaking
person.
to us.
From up above, yes.
Mona, I've seen you do this over the years, and I'm fascinated by it. Tell me, how many hours of videotape did you study, how much audio, and how much reading?
I read mostly. And according to the Chautauqua theory, you don't have to sound like the person. It's not supposed to be acting. And so that just kind of came along with the audio that I got from Marshall Mend. And then I probably watched 2 videotapes of her giving little parts of speeches. That answer your question? Thank you.
Hi, Mona.
Hi.
I'm curious, as far as you wrote your own script, so how do you make the distinction of what to choose to put in and what not to put in?
That's the hardest part. I take notes, like I probably read at least 6 books on her and articles and watch videotapes. And I started to, like I tell my speech students, you kind of figure out what your main points are going to be. First of all, you have to know what your central idea is. So what's my theme going to be? So my theme is you can be a possibility thinker and you can do it. And then for the Chautauqua, I think it's important to give a little bit about the background of the person, but not that they've cut their first tooth and that kind of thing. Something that, is compelling, what made her the person that she was. And then the Chautauqua also says that you probably should have significant emotional experiences when you can. And I had a hard time with Mary Kay. Mother Teresa, there was a moment when she felt that Jesus Christ himself talked to her. There was a time when she picked up the leper from, the person from the gutter and had to take the maggots out of the person's, wounds. Things like that. And I couldn't find much about Mary Kay. In fact, I was hoping there would be some kind of scandal there. And there wasn't. And then finally, some advice. What am I going to do for you? Why are you here in this audience? Don't you want to take something away from this with you? So that's what I do. I start pulling in, and hopefully it's as authentic as possible, too. I try to use as much of her own language, not just what people write about her, but what she actually said. And that's where it really gets interesting because, she's got great one-liners. Great one-liners.
Mona, there's one other thing to advise about, too. Often, most of the people that we have done have been dead quite a long time, and some of them are political leaders. And the question that comes from the audience that they really can't answer, and she'll explain, is if they were alive today on this issue, what would they do? Mm-hmm. And Mona, tell them the don'ts about that.
Well, for example, when did you die? I said, well, I didn't die. I'm here right in front of you right now. Or let's say, well, who's the head of the company right now, or something like that. And I'd say, well, my son is the head of the company right now, where he actually is, but he wasn't for a few years, too. And then you get questions like my friend Annie McKinley tried to ask me, where she tried to stump the scholar. And I've been up nights worrying about that. That's why I was very smart. I had Katie Manns right here. In case I couldn't answer, I had my ace in the hole. I'm not as dumb as I look, especially a blonde.
You'll never be accused of being dumb. The other thing
And
is,
don't I make the world's worst blonde? I kind of thought I looked like Martin Lawrence in Big Mama's House or something like that, you know?
for example, if someone's been dead, like Thomas Jefferson, for a very long time, and you would ask him about something like Roe v. Wade, you should never answer that because you're taking a license with that person who's been dead a long time and they weren't here to deal with that. So you simply have to say something like, well, in my time, we didn't deal with this issue. We always train. Don't try to take that character beyond who they were. That's very important. You've been wonderful to stay.
Thank you so much.
And thank her again, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope we'll see you at 1 o'clock.
And right outside the door, we have some of my